stepping away from having this overall. And last month, MIT also announced that they would no longer require DEI statements for applications across the board, which is a really good sign. And, you know, for better or for worse, schools like Harvard and MIT are really the trendsetters when it comes to higher education. And so where they lead, other schools are likely to follow.
Yeah, and what else are you hearing in that space, Emma, in terms of some of those other institutions? Is there kind of a growing group that is getting on this particular bandwagon, or is it a little more slow to evolve?
You know, it's not entirely clear. I think that there's been a lot of push, you know, in recent months, especially with these very contentious protests over the Israel-Hamas war. A lot of schools are starting to rethink their relationship with making formal political statements. And I just want to correct myself here. I actually, the 2 additional statements are going to be for finalists for positions, so there are no DEI statements for faculty applications in the School of Arts and Sciences. I got myself a little messed up, and I thought I would correct myself right here on air, so you don't have to do it later for me. And so, you know, I think we're seeing a lot of progress when it comes to this, but of course there can always be backlash to the backlash, so you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate you calling yourself out, because that's that is a true sign of someone who deserves to be on this show, because we have to course correct all the time. And so that is, just to be very clear, the new rules. The finalists for the position will submit those 2 statements, one around the efforts to strengthen academic communities, and then the other around the learning environment, where students are encouraged to ask questions and share ideas. And that's part of it. That's part of it, is being able to have the ability to foster that kind of questioning and self-correcting. It's always the hardest thing to do. So that's why we always have you on the show, Emma, because we know we're going to get the right stuff. All right. So final question for you, just real quickly. As you kind of monitor all of these things, you've been watching all of the things going on campus. And clearly there's been a shift at the administration level, at least, that they have got to start calibrating the conversations, and whether it's the protests, whether it's DEI, or other things happening on campus. What else are you watching for? What else are you noticing in terms of any kind of shifts coming from the top of these institutions?
Yeah, I think I'll say really what I am seeing in a lot of elite colleges, presidents are starting to reconsider this relationship with making explicit political statements, with taking political sides, with this idea that there is one correct perspective and it's the university's job to sort of send that down from the top to faculty and then to students. I think that they're starting to realize that there are negative side effects of taking that position, you know, especially as several university presidents have been hauled before Congress, right, for not cracking down on protests hard enough, stuff like that. I think they're starting to realize that maybe they should pump the brakes and instead take a more principled stand for free speech, which will help students of all political perspectives as well as faculty.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the key to the whole thing, is to make sure we maintain that kind of curiosity and that kind of space in that environment on college campuses, so we can have the real kind of learning and learn all the things, including the course correction and all of that. Great stuff, as always. Emma Camp, assistant editor at Reason. Check out her piece at reason.com today. Emma, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
You need to meet my aunt. Her name is Rochelle Morris, and she's running for Salt Lake County Council.
She's super smart, and she really cares about people. She wants Salt Lake County to be a great place for kids.
That means safe parks, safe streets, good rec centers.
And making sure taxes go down instead of up.
Go to voterochellemorris.com to learn more.
Thanks, Zoe and Tilly. I'm Rochelle Morris, and I'm running to make Salt Lake County work better for all of us. With my background in managing money in the private sector, I'm committed to cutting waste, holding the county accountable, and maximizing and protecting your tax dollars for you. Together, we can ensure Salt Lake County is a great place to live for many years to come. I'm Rochelle Morris, and I approve this message. Learn more at voterochellemorris.com.
That's voterochellemorris.com.
Paid for by Rochelle Morris for Salt Lake County Council.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio. Or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
Josh loves springtime in Utah, but he hates to paint, so he called Rhino Shield.
We have a cedar-sided home at the edge of the woods, painted like 1980s beige, and we wanted something that was more of a mid-century and modern look. We were driving around and we saw a sign in somebody's yard and said Rhino Shield. It's not paint.
Rhino Shield's ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
Gave Rhino Shield a call, and in fact, they were fantastic with the arrangement on schedule. The 25-year guarantee was important to us. This is our forever home, and we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to last a long time.
Utah, you can have the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 15% off the regular price.
I'd say if you're thinking about Rhino Shield, just do it. It's been 2 years now, and it still looks like the day it went on.
This offer is limited, so call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or rhinoshieldwest.com.
Go Rhino Shield.
Small business owners, we know tackling your to-do list can sometimes feel like going 12 rounds against a heavyweight champ. Except that heavyweight's gloves are made of something hard, like diamonds. So when a new to-do pops up, you're like, I can't. I'm boxing my diamond boxing glove-wearing heavyweight champ of a to-do list. At Progressive, we don't want to make your day any harder. That's why we make it easy with over 30 customizable coverage options, so you can finally land a knockout blow. See if you can save on business insurance in as little as 7 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers.
Family Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. It's time to get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data, and you get to choose who joins your family plan starting as low as $25 a line.
Does it have to be family?
It can be family or people you like.
Get more lines and more savings. Switch to Straight Talk for family plan starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at Walmart and StraightTalk.com. For network management practices, visit StraightTalk.com. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Taxes and fees apply.
Any Hour Services can make sure your AC keeps you cool this summer. Whether you need a tune-up, repair, or just a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit AnyHourServices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, 2 missionaries of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have been killed in a car crash in North Dakota. Second, the level of the Great Salt Lake has peaked for the year, even with hot weather bringing down more mountain runoff. And third, an ex-wife and an ex-girlfriend of Hunter Biden both testified about his drug addictions at his trial in a firearms charge in Delaware. 84 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, in today's digital landscape, the rise of TikTok has sparked a whirlwind of concern and debate around its potential impact on all kinds of things, including our politics and public discourse. Of course, as millions of young Americans immerse themselves in the app, experts and policymakers alike are grappling with the app's ability to shape political views, fuel polarization, and even spread misinformation or disinformation. Others, of course, would just say that TikTok also presents a really intriguing new frontier for political engagement and civic participation among the young people of this country. And so, which is it, and how will TikTok play a role in this upcoming election season? Christian Paz, a senior politics reporter at Vox, covers the Democratic Party in the 2024 elections, and we are in the middle of the 2024 cycle. And Christian, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great piece. Everyone should check out at Vox.com today, talking about TikTok, and is it breaking young voters' brains? Give us the baseline.
Yeah, I count myself as one of those younger voters that was on TikTok for for a really long time, especially in the wake of the pandemic. And that's kind of where I kind of started with this question, because it seemed to me like there was a generation of young people who experienced the pandemic, the end of the Trump years, as chaotic as those were, the beginning of the Biden years, and of massive inflation in this country, and at the same time that they were being isolated at home, that school was interrupted, that there was all this social turmoil happening, and they were viewing it all through an app that exploded in popularity that 5 years ago no one was using. This is TikTok, and how quickly it exploded in popularity was just so interesting to me. And at the same time, we saw an explosion in the number of younger people, those under the age of 30, who report now using TikTok as their primary method of getting news and information about the world around them. So you combine those two things in an election year where most young people are now on the app. I wonder, right, what does this do to our politics?
Yeah, let's dig into that and unpack some of that in terms of the implications. So you mentioned just it is the source of news for a lot of the younger voters. And so what does that do in terms of how it changes the dynamic in terms of the political conversations, if that's kind of the framework that they're getting the information from?
Definitely. I think the first thing to explain really quickly is that TikTok is similar and very different from other forms of social media, especially in the way that it tries to get people and its users hooked onto it. It is visual. It is very personal. It is face-to-face almost on a phone, where the information that's being presented to you is highly emotional, highly subjective, not really based in fact or rationality. And it is using a algorithm that kind of gets you hooked and tries to find out the perfect kind of recipe of videos to elicit an emotional response from you and get you using the app. And so the thing that I was wondering is, we've seen something similar happen on other social media platforms where you can very easily fall into an algorithmic echo chamber, right? But the thing with TikTok is how young its user base is and how much more powerful that algorithm is. And when you look at that, and the kind of political messaging that's on the app, it tends to skew toward the extremes, and it tends to try to find the perfect mix of emotional and provocative content, whether you're on the right or the left, to kind of get you to stay on the app. And then at the same time, this is the thing that I was really interested in looking into some of the academic research in, that there are signs that TikTok users tend to have a little bit of a different view of the world than those who are non-TikTok users, especially among younger people. And that the early indication we have, and this is to caveat this all, is that it's very young research still, so there's a lot more that needs to be done to be able to definitively say this. But the early indications we have are that you kind of get pushed in a bit of a polarized direction, whether you're on the right or the left, and that kind of gets amplified by this algorithm that kind of pushes content that it thinks you might want, and users report seeing ideologically similar content to the way that they identify. And in an election year, I think that's what I was specifically calling a grand national experiment, is that we have so many young people who are on this app and use it for such a long time, and in a week, in a given day, that when they're running into the political content on those apps, on that app specifically, that it might be warping their view of the world, might be making them more unhappy with the world, or might be making them more polarized.
And I think it's so interesting, too, as you pointed out in your piece, some of the not a lot of research there. As you mentioned, it's young in terms of being able to really analyze any of this, but just the simple math of the algorithms in terms of what you get served up, and the more you click on one thing, the more you get of that same kind, and before you know it, you're way far to the left or way far to the right in all of that. And of course, it also creates the space for even the outside influence, whether that's coming from a political party or a foreign country, in terms of trying to skew that perception just by doing the math of the algorithm.
That's absolutely true. And in talking to TikTok, it's the company itself and its representatives. They were very adamant that they have a lot of safeguards in place to counter misinformation, to make sure that there isn't any paid political spending or advertising going on in the app, especially during election years. And they're trying to be better stewards of their platform. But at the same time, I think you kind of saw it, last week with Donald Trump joining the app, with a few months ago, President Biden joining the app, or his campaign joining the app, that this is a place that is a new frontier, a new battleground for ideas. And, there are plenty of grassroots creators on that platform trying to talk, present the best case for their ideological position. But beyond that, like you mentioned, there have long been concerns about TikTok being used to, as a foreign propaganda or influence tool by China, because it is owned by a Chinese company, and the Chinese Communist Party has the ability to influence the way that Chinese companies operate. That's why we got to the point where we would have this divestment of the parent company ByteDance from TikTok, and why so many people are pushing for a U.S. company to be able to purchase it. But then again, that gets us to the fundamental question there, which is that China doesn't want to let go of this algorithm that we don't understand, that is so mysterious, right? Yeah. And so if they could make more money by selling it, why not sell it? That raises that other specter.
Fascinating stuff. Great insight, great piece. You can check that out at Vox. Christian Paz, senior politics reporter at Vox, and great perspective there. And there's so many things yet to be unpacked in all of that, and how you can actually use this for good in terms of fostering some different kinds of conversations, some different kinds of ideas, and spark some aha moments as well. So very interesting to dive into all of that. Christian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, that's Christian Paz, senior politics reporter at Vox, and it's so interesting that it's all in the math. I'm not great at math, but the algorithms don't lie, and the more you click, the more you get of what you clicked, and soon it becomes surround sound. It is where a social media bubble is born, and it doesn't take that many clicks to get into that space. And then will that push you further to the right? Will that push you further to the left? Will it cause you to just hunker down and not even engage in the process because of where it puts you? Fascinating stuff. We'll continue to track it. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We will step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. When we come back, David Drucker's going to join us. We'll talk about the rise of RFK Jr. and his impact on 2024. Coming up next. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour: a missionary from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from Utah and another from Nevada died in a car crash in North Dakota yesterday. Elder Tommy Gardner from Riverton, Elder Jacob Kessler from Ely were in a car that hit the back of a semi that was stopped in the road. In 2026, Zion National Park will start rerouting large vehicles away from its eastern entrance at Mount Carmel Junction. Park PIO Amanda Rowland says Zion needs those 2 years first to coordinate with other groups.
Tour companies that travel through the park plan their routes typically like 18 to 2 years in advance. So the goal is really to help us mitigate the effects that this might have on some of our partners.
Rerouting will significantly ease the traffic risks and prevent tunnel escorts from holding up traffic. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Republicans in the Senate say a Democrat bill that creates a right to birth control is trying to fix something that isn't broken. Democrats point to a series of lawmaker comments as well as state and local proposals that would limit access to contraception. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 96 points, but the NASDAQ right now is up 330. And our KSL weather, summer here as of tomorrow, up into the 90s. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
Are you really that different than the rest of us?
We are. As a fiduciary, we always focus on what's best for our clients.
What services do you offer besides investing?
We have a team of specialists in financial planning, estate planning, and more.
Your clients rely on you for all that?
Yes, we ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Okay, but you still sell commission-based products, right?
No, because we believe that's a conflict of interest. We prioritize service over sales goals.
So, then how do your fees work?
We have a simple and transparent fee that's a percentage of our clients' portfolios. So we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, we're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at fisherinvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Debbie Myler, wife of Attorney General candidate Frank Myler. Candidates speak theoretically about helping the oppressed and abused. Frank actually does that. I know because I work with him. He's actively fought these battles for years, providing free legal advice to people in some of the most desperate situations. I've seen the fruits of Frank's labors. We want an Attorney General who cares. Frank is that person. Vote Frank Myler for Utah Attorney General.
This is Frank Myler, and I approve this ad. Paid for by the committee to elect Frank Myler Attorney General.
If your roof is over 15 years old or hasn't been inspected in the last 5 years, you might be at risk of leaks. Many wait until water damage occurs to seek help. With Master Roofing's proprietary repair and restoration process, they can significantly extend your roof's life. Don't wait for a disaster. Call the Masters at 801-383-0072 or visit masterroofingutah.com for a free assessment today.
You know, in Box Elder County, they're all about the bucket list. Want to go birding at the premier birding destination in the western United States? Well, check off the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. How about land art? The spiral jetty and sun tunnels will leave you inspired. Or stand on the spot where the Union and Central Pacific Railroads joined and forged the destiny of a nation. Yep, Golden Spike National Historical Park is like no other place. Check. Splash, boat, camp, or fish your day away? Willard Bay State Park will guarantee a good time. Soak in a natural hot spring with the highest mineral content in the world? That would be Crystal Hot Springs. You'll feel rejuvenated. Eat at Utah's original steakhouse. Maddox Ranch House is perfection. Check. A 1920s diner. The Idle Owl Cafe will transport you back in time. As you empty your Box Elder County bucket list, you'll find a whole new set of adventures to fill it up again. Fill up your bucket list at visitboxeldercounty.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Valley Freeway traffic looking good, including I-15 north and southbound between Ogden and Provo. But in Weber County in Ogden, we do have a crash northbound Harrison Boulevard at 46th Street. It's blocking a right lane of traffic. Spend time with your loved ones at the most unique dining experience in Utah. Five Alls Restaurant, 5 stars, 5 courses, history and tradition. Reservations and menu at 5alls.com. 5 Alls. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Hot weather arrives in Utah this week with a high of 89 today, then 95 tomorrow and Friday. There's also a chance of rain from Friday through the weekend. And right now, we're at 84 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the current headlines, of course, when it relates to the 2024 presidential contest is about the current president and the former president and all things that are happening in their sphere. But underneath the headlines, there's still a lot of chatter and some interesting clamor around Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s very unconventional presidential campaign. And while it may seem like it's just one more little rogue thing that might be irritating to both the Democrats and the Republicans, it might be time to think again about what we think we know about that campaign and how it's actually functioning if you actually experience it in America. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we look at the presidential politics and the RFK Jr. experience, you have to experience it. We always say that. And someone who's actually been out there experiencing it in real places in the country, not just from a perch in Washington, D.C. Of course, we always turn to David Drucker, senior writer at The Dispatch. And David, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be here, Boyd. Thank you.
Hey, you've been out there on the campaign trail, and while there are clearly some things that are very unconventional about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign, there are a lot of things that are some pretty good discipline and staging and things that you would expect out of a big-time presidential campaign.
Yeah, it was really quite a spectacle. I was in Aurora, Colorado, a couple of weeks ago for an RFK Jr. rally. Aurora is a suburb of Denver, so I could have said Denver, but technically Aurora, about 25 minutes outside of downtown Denver. And he put on this campaign rally at a really sort of upscale kind of food hall, which are all the rage these days. It's called the Stanley Marketplace, former aviation manufacturing facility years ago. And it's funny because RFK Jr. himself can be kind of quirky or weird or different. But, I mean, this was a top-flight campaign rally. I mean, first of all, the security was intense and was very reminiscent of Secret Service level security. The staging was very well done. There was staff everywhere, people in badges everywhere. They had a band that entertained the crowd for a while, a cover band. They had speakers to warm up the crowd. And what was interesting to me about the speakers that warmed up the crowd was that a lot of them were, just about all of them were either RFK campaign advisors or actually on staff. And I could tell that the crowd had gotten to know some of these people, and they seemed just as happy to hear from them as they did later from RFK Jr. But ultimately, the most telling thing to me were sort of two things. One, I talked to a lot of voters, and they were from across the political spectrum: former Biden voters, former Trump voters, voters that never vote for the two nominees from the major parties, and they really packed them in there. I mean, they ended up with about 1,500, which meant they had to do an outside overflow area at the last minute, and everybody stayed. It went late. Wow. It started late. It went late because they were trying to accommodate the people that were lined up to get in, and because of the level of security, it took a while to get them all in. But nobody left, and everybody was sort of wrapped at attention, and they were all standing. I mean, there were some seats for the elderly and people that needed it, but basically it was standing room only and only standing available. They didn't have chairs throughout the place. And look, it may never be enough. I doubt it will ever be enough to really compete for the White House, but it could be enough to knock out either Biden or Trump by, taking a share of the vote that might have gone to one or the other.
Yeah, so fascinating. As you watch that play out, anything surprise you as you were kind of getting a sense of who actually showed up? And again, having a crowd that big, that takes some organizing and that takes some structure. It also takes a candidate that's going to be a big enough draw. Anything surprise you in your conversations with those who were there either before or after they had a chance to hear from Kennedy?
Well, I don't know if any of it was surprising, but I did find the consistency in the interviews notable. I always like to start out, even when I'm at a Trump rally or a Biden rally or something like that, just asking people, hey, why do you're probably here because you support the candidate? Yes, I support the candidate. Well, what do you like about him? And I don't even get any deeper than that because I like to see, what I get with an open-ended question.
Yeah.
And at the RFK rally, the answer that I got to that open-ended question, almost to a person, was that they think RFK is honest, he has integrity, he's refreshing, he's going to do what's right. I love, I had two different people as I was going through the notes, and I didn't remember this, but I had two different people in separate interviews begin when I said, "What do you like about him?" say, "I just love this man," and I've got that in the story. the same language, the same wording. It's just that was their reaction. So I thought that was very interesting. It's not that you don't hear that from people who care enough about a candidate to go to a rally, but it was just the consistency. The other thing I will say, and if anything surprised me, it was this. There's so much focus, understandably so, on, these unorthodox views that RFK has and the oddball sort of issues that he focuses on. His supporters don't think they're oddball issues, but they're just different, right? But if you could take all of that away and just watch him operate, both during the rally and then in the selfie line that lasted about an hour afterwards, he is a man with some considerable political skill and charisma. He knows what he's doing as a candidate who is appealing to voters, right? He's got a lot of innate skill. Now, I think the flaw in his approach is that he's not focused on the issues that most voters care about. Right. His voters love him because he's focused on these niche boutique issues that they all care about. And because he's the only one doing it and because he's so unapologetic about it, they love him for it. But most voters want to hear about how you're going to tackle inflation, and they want to talk about how you're going to – they want to hear you talk about how you're going to, maintain the United States as, a major power in the world, even though, the candidates can differ on that. And he never really talked much about prices are high. Here's my plan to bring them down. There's chaos around the world. Here's my plan to strengthen our position. He was very much about bringing America home and reducing our footprint in the world in a way that doesn't involve us being a major player from a military standpoint, and that's always very tricky. But particularly on domestic issues, focused a lot on health care, which of course is his thing. A lot on what he feels is the medical industrial complex and all that stuff.
Fascinating.
But he didn't really focus on inflation and economics in that way. And just one last thing here. Sometimes he did focus on normal issues, what I would say is, standard issues like the debt. He focused a lot on the exploding federal debt.
Right.
And what a problem it is. But he didn't offer any solutions. And when I asked him afterwards, he did gaggle. So what's your plan to deal with it? And, he doesn't want to cut any domestic spending. He wants to close, hundreds of military bases. He told us, for the reporters assembled, drastically reduce spending on defense.
Yeah. Wow.
And
fascinating.
that just doesn't sell. It doesn't sell to most voters. And so in a way, he's not really positioning himself as a real third alternative. Like, I like Republicans or I like Democrats, but this guy's too old and this guy's too, chaotic.
Yeah.
What about this third option? And the third option is just
not
going to appeal to most voters.
Fascinating stuff. Great report as always. You can read it at The Dispatch, thedispatch.com. David Drucker, been out on the road. Thanks for joining us today. Great stuff.
Anytime, Boyd. Thank you.
All right. Really interesting perspective. And again, it's always about the art of the possible when it comes to politics. We'll keep watching that to make sure we get past the headlines and find out what the voters are really thinking. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. And suddenly,
we watch temperatures start their climb.
It's summer.
Better chances for 90-degree days.
Get a reliable KSL forecast and the latest road and construction delays. With traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s. Mornings and afternoons, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Jake and Nate from Advanced Window Products were in the studio yesterday afternoon, and you guys are back. Why?
Hey, we want to extend that offer that we had for your listeners yesterday of $3,000 off 10 or more windows. So those of you that were not able to listen yesterday, we're going to extend that. All you have to do is call today. Get on that schedule, and we're going to give you $3,000 off 10 or more windows.
Advanced Window Products is a company that's been doing business for 38 years in Salt Lake City. Your opportunity to get new windows that'll enhance the look of your home, your number one asset, and will cut your energy bills, perhaps most important, right? They do cut your energy bills.
Yeah, the energy savings will be significant.
Advanced Window Products offers financing as low as $170 a month. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. Call now, 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, advancedwindowsusa.com.
Last year's RV trip, we met a couple with the same bumper sticker. What are the odds?
Your cousin isn't a good storyteller.
He was a podiatrist, or was it a pharmacist? Huh,
you don't say.
Oh, I can't remember.
But she owns an RV protected by Progressive, and you don't. So until you get your own RV, her stories are the most interesting stories you've ever heard.
Wow, interesting.
And when you do get your own RV, save money by bundling it with your home, auto, or other vehicles with Progressive.
Oh, anesthesiologist. He was an anesthesiologist.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby. It's Jennifer Coolidge. Hi. I'm so glad I reached you at 2 a.m.
Oh, of course. Anyone with a Discover card can call and talk to a real person 24/7. Now, how can I help?
Yeah, I used my Discover card to buy these yellow pleather pajamas, and I'm just not sure I'm pulling them off.
24/7 U.S.-based customer service. It pays to Discover. Limitations apply. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
In Utah, we don't make excuses. We work hard. We do what's right. We get it done. Washington, D.C. could learn a lesson from Utah and from Republican John Curtis. John Curtis is our first line of defense against Joe Biden's policies that have made life harder in Utah. In Congress, John's known as the get-it-done guy. He passed 15 bills that make us safer and stronger. John Curtis is reducing regulations so Utah small businesses can grow and you can afford your energy bills. And as always, he's fighting for American energy dominance as our champion for affordable, reliable, and clean energy. When Utah thrives, America thrives. John Curtis knows that, and in the U.S. Senate, he'll teach Washington how we do it in Utah. John Curtis, working hard and getting it done the Utah way. ClearPath Action Fund paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. ClearPathActionFund.org.
Up to a 30% upfront bonus and 12% per year guaranteed growth for retirement. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and these are the highest guarantees with annuities I have seen in my life. When interest rates are this high, there are silver linings, and annuity guarantees are one of them. Up to a 30% bonus upfront for retirement income. On $100,000, that's up to $42,000 guaranteed in the first year. And it's because of the economy and its high interest rates. Don't let anyone, especially another financial advisor, tell you it's not true. Up to 30% upfront just for opening an account and up to 12% per year guaranteed income growth. Don't miss out. This won't last forever. If you have an old 401k, get up to 30% upfront and 12% guaranteed growth for income today.
Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
We have breaking news at this hour. Chad Daybell's lawyers have asked Idaho's Supreme Court to review both his murder convictions and his death sentence. East Idaho News reports the appeal was filed with the court earlier this week. Daybell was convicted last week in the murders of his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and his second wife's two children, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Valdell. Among the mistakes, the Daybell's lawyers allege not dismissing the grand jury indictment in the case and not instructing the jury sufficiently on the issue of reasonable doubt. And we'll have more on that coming up. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from inside sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson as we continue to watch the 2024 election. And, of course, you should have a ballot in your mailbox today as we get to the primary election coming up on June the 25th. And, of course, one of those contested places and spaces is the 3rd Congressional District here in the state of Utah. And as we go through the candidates there, really pleased to have joining us in studio, live and real today, John Frugal-Dougal. Of course, you know him as your state auditor. And, John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Boyd, great to be with you.
So give us a sense first, you've been the Frugal Dougal man for a number of years now. You've been.
My dad was Frugal Dougal before I was even born. I'm the oldest of 11 kids. Frugal is all I ever knew growing up.
That's all you knew. I'm from 11 kids as well, so I totally
where
get
you
that
at?
part. I'm number 8.
I'm the oldest. An overwhelming sense of responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you've been doing the job up there for the state, watching all the pennies and making sure things actually do add up. And get results. The transparency, I think, has been a hallmark of your efforts up there. So give us a sense of why this race, why now for you?
So I've spent, unfortunately, 2 decades saying I don't want to waste my time in D.C. and I know you understand that situation. And so it was an uncomfortable conversation in Thanksgiving with my wife and family. As I said, nobody seems to understand the budget back there. The spending's out of control. Congress has 2 responsibilities, budgeting and oversight. It's failing at both. And budgeting and oversight is what I do. It's what I did for a decade in the legislature. When I left, I was the number 2 guy in the House in charge of the whole state budget. Had a reputation for being a watchdog, got elected as auditor. I'm in my 12th year. I've served 11 years as auditor. So at the end of the year, it will be 12 years as auditor, serving as Utah's watchdog. And so that's my concern. And I told my wife, because my plan was to go back to the private sector and retire and do that and spend more time with family, especially with the new grandbaby that's 2 years old now, growing up fast. And so that's my focus. And I just said it doesn't feel good to just walk away and throw up my hands and say, somebody else's problem when I have something that I could offer.
Yeah, we played a clip from Condoleezza Rice recently talking about some of the bigger international things, and she said that leaders don't look the other way. They help shape the future, help shape the conversation. And it seems to me when it comes to those fiscal issues, whether it's just purely the deficit spending, whether it's the $34 trillion in debt, we've got a whole confluence of things that will happen early in 2025. We'll have a debt ceiling debacle. I'm sure we'll be dealing with funding the government again because they'll kick that can down the road.
Well,
how should we
debating
start
tax
doing it
policy
different?
and everything else like that.
Yeah, that's right. We also have tax. We have tax things expiring as well.
And I tell folks at the end of the day, because folks will say, well, there's more about the government than money. And at the end of the day, everything is a fiscal matter. You care about border security? Fiscal matter. National defense, fiscal matter. Tax policy, fiscal matter. The economy, it's a fiscal matter. It's about money they take from you or that they borrow that they then spend.
Yeah.
And so all of it. And so one of the first things we have to do is get back there and help folks better understand the numbers and what's really going on. And my experience is most elected officials and most people in the public are uncomfortable with numbers.
Yeah.
It makes them scared. They don't know how to balance their own budget. They struggle when it comes to fiscal issues. They're much more interested in policy discussions rather than fiscal issues. But that's where you got to start from, is helping folks understand what the numbers really mean to them and put it into a situation that they understand. I know some people say, well, you can't compare the federal budget to a family budget. And I think, in a broad situation, you actually can. Because we're overspending by 30% right now today. So imagine if you make $100,000 a year, we're essentially spending $130,000 a year. And what are most Americans doing? Putting it on their credit card.
Yep.
Okay, how long can you sustain that?
Math always wins.
Not long at all.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're in the situation where right now we're going to be spending more to service the debt than on national defense. And I think national defense is the key reason for the federal government. And so that doesn't bode well. And some folks are concerned about the future of our democracy, and I'll use their term, democracy. I think it's a republic, but either way, if we're struggling to make ends meet, if Social Security is going to be cut 23% in the next decade, the benefits, and the retirees are not going to get what they're expecting, if we're balancing the budget on the backs of our servicemen and women, if we're pushed to raise taxes and weakening the economy and people are losing jobs, in a decade, what kind of democracy are we going to have? And that's the situation we're facing. And like you said, the math always wins. The math always catches up. And right now, we've been for decades kicking the can down the road, thinking we can defy the odds, and we can't.
Yeah, the math will win in the end. And so talk to me about how you would go about that. Day one, you've been sworn in. It's January the 5th. And you're looking for your colleagues on the floor.
Now you're being sworn at.
You go from being sworn in to being sworn at. That's a very good point. You're going to find one of your colleagues on the floor of the House. Where does the conversation begin?
The conversation begins by building a relationship. I am willing to collaborate with anybody. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. Anybody that cares about bringing fiscal sanity in Washington, D.C., I will collaborate with them. And I will work to understand what is important to them. Because coming back to Social Security, I don't think Democrats and Republicans want to kick grandma to the curb. But that's essentially what's going to happen if we don't get serious and start talking about Social Security, not just for retirees, but for those that just graduated from college a few weeks ago and everybody in between. But you start looking from common ground, what matters to them, what's important to their constituents, and then branching out from there. And that's where you start off, and you got to build those relationships.
Yeah, so as you look at the role of government, you talk about the fiscal component, the military component. What else in our constitutional republic should we be looking at as citizens in terms of our expectations of what a member of Congress is supposed to do? What should it be?
Well, too often folks are like, well, you need to solve this problem, that problem, whatever, and they keep pushing it up to, whether it's the state or the federal level.
Yeah.
And the simple fact is, as you know, the Constitution sets out a very limited set of responsibilities for the federal government, for Congress. And so we should be looking and saying everything else that doesn't fit, how do we push that back to the states and the people?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this magical thing called the 10th Amendment that we forget about. But it's trying to help folks understand, let's push things back. And it's helping members of Congress understand we don't have to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
In fact, because their focus is so broad on so many things, they struggle to get anything really done.
Yeah, the federalism component and getting it back to the states, getting back to the community is such a key piece to that. As you've been out on the campaign trail, talking with voters in the 3rd District, anything surprise you that you've heard from potential voters going into this?
Well, probably one of the key things is there's a hyper focus about one individual. And that seems to swamp a lot of the discussion, where I think there are many more significant, serious issues, whether it's fiscal issues, national security issues, the strength of the economy. There's many more issues than just one single person. And as I've talked with folks, I described that the Republican Party used to be the party of big ideas. Think back at Ronald Reagan. Think back at Dwight Eisenhower, Teddy Roosevelt. Big ideas. Yeah. Right now, what are the big ideas we stand for today? And when I talk with most folks, they say, well, we're the opposition party. We're the party of no. We can't think of any big ideas. And we got to get back to the big ideas of where we're going to go. Because think about a team. Yeah. If you don't have a shared focus of what you're trying to accomplish, there's a lot of infighting.
Yeah.
But if you have a shared goal of where you're trying to go, now you can coalesce as a team and you can drive in that direction.
Yeah.
And we got to get back to those mobilizing ideas.
Yeah. All right. Final question. I asked this question of everyone from presidential candidates down to the local county council. Elections are hard. You've been in the middle of that ruckus for a while. What will make all of this worthwhile to you, even if you get to June the 26th and you come up short in the primary? What would make it all worth it even then?
Well, the most important thing is helping folks better understand the dire fiscal situation we're in, the concern we have with the economy, the overdependence we have on other countries, and being a part of that dialogue and part of that debate is what was critical from my perspective. That's why I jumped in.
Fantastic. John Frugal Dougal, on the board there for the 3rd congressional seat. Again, primary ballots should be in your box today. So get them out of the mailbox, get them onto your kitchen table, do your research, do your homework, think about it, think about the principles, think about the policies, and think about the impact it's going to have in your world. We all have a responsibility to engage. John Dougal, thanks so much for joining us in studio today.
Hey, thank you.
All right, that's John Dougal, state auditor running for the 3rd congressional district seat. We'll have a lot more to go as we continue our march towards June the 25th and the primary election. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, Chad Daybell's lawyers are asking the Idaho Supreme Court to review both his murder convictions and his death sentence. East Idaho News reports the appeal was filed with the court on Monday. He was convicted last week in the murders of his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and his second wife's 2 children, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. Among the mistakes that Daybell's lawyers allege, allowing the prosecution to amend the indictment, not dismissing the grand jury indictment in that case, and not instructing the jury sufficiently on the issue of reasonable doubt. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden has a couple of meetings set with the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. ABC's Karen Travers has more.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said President Biden's 2 upcoming meetings with Ukraine's President Zelensky signal the depth of the U.S. commitment to Ukraine at what he called a vital moment.
President Biden has mobilized an enormous amount of air defense capacity, and he will talk to President Zelensky about what more we can do on that front.
Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today up 96 points, but the NASDAQ finished at 330 points up. The S&P 500 was up 62. Our KSL weather, look out for the heat wave. Here it comes. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Springtime in Utah, and if you hate to paint, do what your neighbor Judy did. She called Rhino Shield.
After having the house painted with kind of usual house paint, I was seeing cracks appearing about every 3 years and just wasn't very satisfied with that.
Rhino Shield ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
I can't speak highly enough about the Rhino Shield crew. They also were great at working with me to get the exact right color because I was very particular.
Utah, you too can have the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 15% off the regular price.
I would not hesitate to call Rhino Shield, and I am just thrilled to recommend Rhino Shield to my friends and neighbors and family.
This offer is limited. Call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or rhinoshieldwest.com.
Go Rhino Shield. You need to meet my aunt. Her name is Rochelle Morris, and she's running for Salt Lake County Council. She's super smart, and she really cares about people. She wants Salt Lake County to be a great place for kids. That means safe parks, safe streets, good rec centers, and making sure taxes go down instead of up. Go to voterochellemorris.com to learn more.
Thanks, Zoe and Tilly. I'm Rochelle Morris, and I'm running to make Salt Lake County work better for all of us. With my background in managing money in the private sector, I'm committed to cutting waste, holding the county accountable, and maximizing and protecting your tax dollars for you. Together, we can ensure Salt Lake County is a great place to live for many years to come. I'm Rochelle Morris, and I approve this message. Learn more at voterochellemorris.com.
That's voterochellemorris.com.
Paid for by Rochelle Morris for Salt Lake County Council.
You ready to go for the gold? It's time to check out Gold Tier Checking at Hercules Credit Union. Now, they have locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, and Salt Lake City, or you can always find them online at herculescu.com. However you find them, wherever you look for them, make sure you check out Gold Tier Checking. Right now, you can get a promotional rate of 4.25% on the balance in your checking account. That never happens. You'll also earn points every time you use your debit card. You can redeem those for cash back, travel, gift cards, and much more. You also get great things like free credit monitoring and no monthly fees to your account, all through our friends at Hercules Credit Union. They're always about growing stronger together. They've been doing this since 1946, and they're never about just having a transaction with you as a banker. They're about having a relationship with you so that you can grow stronger financially together. It's all about Hercules Credit Union. Again, you can check them out in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City, or online at herculescu.com.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. Did you know that we offer 3 distinct styles of gutter protection? Each one meant to handle a specific leaf problem. You might not even know there are different styles of gutter protection, but there are. And if you pick the wrong one, it could be a huge waste of money. Now, the big gutter guard companies won't tell you this. They try to sell you a one-size-fits-all gutter guard. And it could be completely wrong for the amount and types of trees and leaves you have. Not RGS Exteriors. We understand which kind of leaf problem needs which kind of gutter guard. We'll do an in-depth evaluation to assess the types, locations, and numbers of trees in your yard. Based on that data, we match your home to the right gutter guard. So don't risk wasting money on the wrong gutter protection. For a free evaluation and estimate, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have a roadside fire in Utah County. It's near I-15 and the Highway 6 junction in Spanish Fork, but not affecting traffic. A crash on I-15 in Sandy going northbound prior to 90th South, and an auto pedestrian accident downtown at 1300 Southwest Temple. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, and excellent dining and shopping await you. Learn more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Sponsored by the Utah Office of Tourism. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Hot weather arrives in Utah this week with a high of 89 today, 95 tomorrow and Friday, and also a chance of rain from Friday through the weekend. Right now, 86 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, we often call out the dysfunction in Congress. We will remain equal opportunity offenders for when things are not being done the way they need to be done, especially when it comes to what Congress is and isn't doing in terms of the things that it is supposed to be doing. The things that are outlined in the Constitution are pretty small. They're pretty specific. We know focus always precedes success, especially when it comes to Congress. And the further afield they get, the more mistakes they make, and the more of your money they tend to spend, and the more debt they rack up for your children and grandchildren. So we have to look at, where do we create this opportunity for focus? Can focus precede success so that government can actually function better by doing fewer things? Kevin Kosar, someone we always turn to, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he studies the U.S. Congress and the administrative state. And Kevin has a great piece in The Hill. Check it out at thehill.com today. And Kevin, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
So you point out in your piece that we've got some new tariffs coming on steel and aluminum. We've got semiconductors and electric vehicles and all kinds of other things that seem to be lining up, some which appear to be 2024 related. And some of those are just, if you're in power, you like to spend, and if you're out of power, you like to call out that spending is bad. But you point out in your piece the thing that I think is the most important thing, and that is, what is the role of government, and how do we make sure government's focused on doing what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, we've kind of, over the last 100 years or so, gotten rather confused about the role of the federal government versus the role of the states and local governments. Federalism has been made a hash of, as the federal role has just expanded and expanded. And if you want to get a good look at this, go out to usa.gov/agency-index, and there you will find an A to Z list of all the federal agencies that exist. And it takes forever to scroll through it. It's unbelievable. There are things that you've never heard of, like the Career Technical and Adult Education Office, the National Institute of Arthritis and Musculoskeletal and Skin Diseases. There's just an astonishing amount of stuff, which, how does it all fit together? And why are all these things being done? The answer is, well, over time, various advocates, one way or another, have said, we should get into this. We should work on this problem. So something gets created, another thing gets created, and over until we've got this colossus of federal government.
Yeah, and as you look at that, and it is the ultimate in doom scrolling, I think, to try to get through all the agencies that have been created. And some of those were probably created with the best of intentions, and then they just continue to expand. One of the things you pointed out in your piece that I think is so vital is that there are a lot of self-interested groups that are benefiting from this massive expansion of government trying to do everything and be everything to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing nefarious. This is not just a giant DC plot to rob Americans blind. This is pluralism.
Yeah.
There are people all over the country who have different views, different attitudes, different wants, different needs, and they often bring them to Washington, D.C., or they give money to groups that come to Washington, D.C. Take, for example, when I was 16 years old, I was told by my mother, if you want to get free towing in case your secondhand car breaks down, you better sign up for the American Auto Association. So I did. I got a membership. I didn't realize that they lobbied. I didn't realize that they push policy positions in Washington, D.C. They do. AARP, another group I'm now a member of, lucky me. They do the same thing. Groups everywhere come here. You throw a rock in D.C., you're going to hit a group office.
That is absolutely true. We used to say you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a lobbyist for one form or another there in D.C. And so let's look at how we channel this back in just a little bit in terms of what it is that government should be doing, recognizing it can't do everything without complete collapse. That focus, again, is so critical to all of that. And I want to go back. You raised the point of federalism. We're part of the Make Federalism Cool Again crowd out here. And how do we get back to that to recognize, okay, if the federal government's going to do something, it better be in its parameter to do, and it better do it incredibly well and be efficient and actually produce the results that are the desired results of whatever the spending is. How do we get back to a different kind of conversation with all of this spending?
Well, I think first it's to raise the question with the people we elect. You know, as a voter, ask your member of Congress, what are you doing to rebalance federalism? When you see political candidates, if you can send them in, question online or get up to them in person, ask them, what do you think the federal government should be doing and what should go back to the states? If they start hearing this sort of stuff, they'll think, okay, people actually care. If they don't hear it, if all they hear is the group saying, do more at the federal level, they're going to acquiesce to that. So that's one place to start. The other thing that should happen is that conservatives in Congress should work together to create, I hate to say a commission because a commission sounds like something that never works, but create a process whereby you could just start going through all the government agencies, all the tax loopholes, all the old regulations that are no longer needed or are cross-cutting and running contrary to other regulations. Just put these things into a big heap and then vote them up or down. Take a cut at them, defund them, whatever it takes. Go after them. Everybody bleeds a little bit, but at least you could cull the government back down to a more manageable size, because right now it's just colossal.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to look at it in terms of just things that are no longer working. And to me, it always goes back to, what are you afraid of? So, the Democrats, you can say, okay, if you want to be the party of the little guys, then you should want to do an audit of every one of those programs that touch anybody in poverty to make sure there's no waste, fraud, or abuse, and that they're actually producing results so we can hold people accountable. And if not, let's cut there so we can put it somewhere that is making a difference. But it seems to me that it kind of goes back to the lobbying and the group think back there, that everyone is afraid of what happens if I let go, as opposed to let the government do only what it's supposed to do and push those other things back to the states and the communities.
Yeah, and I should mention in my column, I cited as my inspiration a book by Jonathan Rauch called Demosclerosis. And Jonathan Rauch is not a right-wing guy. He's never been a right-wing guy. He's a champion of gay marriage. He's a guy who just wants government to work. And that's his big argument, that if you keep layering more and more responsibilities on agencies and then standing up new agencies and layering lots of responsibilities on them, nothing is going to get done particularly well. Because guess what? We're not actually hiring more bureaucrats. The number of bureaucrats has not gone up in the last 30 years, but we got bigger government. So it's all being outsourced, and there's contracts, and that's a whole mess to manage. It's a lot of paper shuffling and a lot of money spent.
Yeah, so much of that. And we love Jonathan Rauch. He's a good friend of the show. And you're right. He is someone who just wants it to work properly, because that's what is best for we the people, is for government to do really what Lincoln said, that there is a role of government. This is not an anti-government segment, but government is supposed to do those things to clear the path of laudable pursuit for all, to give all an unfettered start and a fair chance, to remove those artificial weights. That's the role, and those very simple things. But when we get so many things and we keep adding, we end up doing nothing very well, and all we do is add more debt and deficit spending, which ultimately hurts the poor and the most vulnerable among us the most. Great perspective. This is a great piece. You want to check it out at The Hill. Kevin Kosar, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Kevin, as always, thanks so much for your perspective.
Thank you, Boyd.
All right, that's Kevin Kosar from AEI, and this is an important one. In fact, we're going to have to get Jonathan Rauch on the program next week. I want to dive into his new book, Demosclerosis, the condition endemic to our free society that we're just going so far afield. Let's just get it working right and working for you. Radical concept. We'll be right back.
How many of you have been waiting months or even years to get a crown, but don't have $1,200 to $1,500 to get one? Only Crowns offers same-day crowns at a fraction of the cost of your dentist. Plus, you're in and out in under 90 minutes. Save your money and save your time with Only Crowns. They provide an unmatched lifetime warranty. No dental insurance? No problem. Don't let the price of a crown keep you from enjoying good dental health. Only Crowns is here, and there's nothing like it anywhere in Utah. Done fast, done right, just $6.99 per tooth. They'll offer a limited exam, all the x-rays needed, plus a full zirconia crown with a lifetime warranty and no hidden fees. No one else offers that, and it's yours with Only Crowns. Visit Only Crowns next to Shields and Sandy or online at onlycrowns.com and get details, including how to score a Stanley mug for the first 100 appointments, along with a chance to win an electric bike. No purchase necessary. Onlycrowns.com. That's onlycrowns.com.
This week's movie show brought to you by My Hearing Center. Schedule a hearing evaluation and be entered to win a set of premium hearing aids by tuning in Friday from 10 to 1.
Spencer Cox. Time magazine said he was not afraid to be woke. Spencer Cox was caught on video telling students his pronouns. Should he be talking this way to our children? Cox vetoed a ban on boys and girls sports in the state of Utah. Spencer Cox. Too woke to protect our children. Learn more at removecox.com. Removecox.com. Paid for by Remove Cox. This advertisement is not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Put your phone on D&D. That means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always sing with me. So put your phone on D&D. That means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always remember this beat.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
I'm John Curtis. As a small businessman, I built gun ranges to help our law enforcement and our military. As mayor of Provo, I took aim at reducing waste, and we balanced our budget. In Congress, I've stood up to Biden and voted repeatedly against his reckless spending.
And when it comes to standing up to D.C. and protecting our land, John Curtis has done that too. He forced the federal government to transfer more land back to Utah than anyone in state history.
I'll never let D.C. bureaucrats or outsiders tell us how to manage our land.
And John Curtis is the only candidate China has threatened to arrest because John stands up to the communist aggression. And Curtis is fighting to secure our border and stop the cartel's deadly flow of drugs in our country.
I will always stand up for America and Utah. That's why I approve this message.
John Curtis, conservative Republican for U.S. Senate.
I'd be honored to have your support.
Paid for by John Curtis for Utah.
Cedar City Bryan Head is full of things you love, from the Shakespeare Festival to hiking, biking, ATV trails, and more. Get to know you in Utah. Plan today at visitcedarcity.com.
Hey, I'm Casey Scott, and I have a podcast called Project Recovery, inspiring stories about going from rock bottom to living addiction-free. Follow us on KSLpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Chad Daybell's lawyers have appealed his murder convictions and his death sentence to the Idaho Supreme Court. Second, President Biden has a couple of meetings set with the president of Ukraine while he's in Europe. And third, state wildlife officers tried to get a bear out of a tree gently this morning. Instead, it fell 20 feet onto a Salt Lake City sidewalk. 86 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. And as we round out the program today and as we look at what took place on June the 6th, 1944, of course, when Allied forces invaded Normandy, largest amphibious offensive in the history of the world, and the March of Freedom went on from there. And there's so many things that we'll talk about today and tomorrow, in particular, as we celebrate 80 years since that fateful day. I want to go to some of the things that are a little under the headlines, some things that we haven't really been thinking about in terms of what took place on that day. And I want to go in particular to the President of the United States at the time, Franklin D. Roosevelt. And on D-Day, on June the 6th, he actually addressed the nation. Now, he addressed the nation and then he led the nation, but not in the way that you might think. Roosevelt addressed the nation for about 37 seconds, and then he led the nation in prayer. I can't imagine either the current or the former president taking 6.5 minutes to not talk at the nation, not speak to the nation, but to lead the nation in prayer. So I actually want to go through it. It's a fascinating thing. So I want to begin with President Roosevelt. He, again, told his fellow Americans, he said, this is a big time. And so we're going to change my conversation with you. Take a listen.
And so, in this poignant hour, I ask you to join with me in prayer. Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. Lead them straight and true. Give strength to their arms, stoutness to their hearts, steadfastness in their faith. They will need thy blessings. Their road will be long and hard. For the enemy is strong. He may hurl back our forces. Success may not come with rushing speed, but we shall return again and again. And we know that by thy grace and by the righteousness of our cause, our sons will triumph.
That was the beginning of the prayer by the President of the United States on June the 6th, 1944. President Roosevelt went on in that prayer to say, look, this is not about a quest for power, but for freedom.
They fight not for the lust of conquest. They fight to end conquest. They fight to liberate. They fight to let justice arise and tolerance and goodwill among all thy people. They yearn but for the end of battle, for their return to the haven of home. Some will never return. Embrace these, Father, and receive them, thy heroic servants, into thy kingdom.
President Roosevelt praying that this was a fight to end conquest, and that this was not something that the nation wanted, but that the nation would do. It was interesting, within this prayer, again, offered by the President of the United States with the American people, he said he actually resisted the call from many of his colleagues in Washington, D.C. and around the world to call the American people to a day of prayer. He had something a little different in mind.
Many people have urged that I call the nation into a single day of special prayer. But because the road is long and the desire is great, I ask that our people devote themselves in a continuance of prayer as we rise to each new day, and again when each day is spent, let words of prayer be on our lips, invoking thy help to our efforts.
I thought it was important that President Roosevelt prayed because the road would be long, that a simple day of prayer was not enough. I think that's with a little bit of foretelling there from President Roosevelt of how limited our focus and our attention spans would become over the years. And so he rejected that idea to have just a single day of prayer, but a continuance of prayer. That focus is such an important thing. As the president continued on in this prayer, again, over 6 minutes of praying with the nation, he talked about the faith, and he talked about that idea that we have to be focused and not be distracted by things that may divide us.
Give us faith in thee, faith in our sons, faith in each other, faith in our united crusade. Let not the keenness of our spirit ever be dulled. Let not the impacts of temporary events, of temporal matters of but fleeting moment, Let not these deter us in our unconquerable purpose.
I think that was the President of the United States actually being quite prophetic, not only for what was taking place on June the 6th, 1944, but what is actually happening in our country today. That infinite plea that he had, that we are not to be distracted, that the keenness of our spirit not be dulled, that we don't let the impact of temporary events distract us, those temporal matters or those fleeting moments, that we don't let those deter us from the purpose. I think that's a very instructive thing coming all the way back in 1944, 80 years ago, from the President of the United States. And then finally, President Roosevelt concluded, again, an over 6-minute prayer with the nation, talking about what we need to do to actually get to peace.
Lead us to the saving of our country, and with our sister nations into a world unity that will spell a sure peace, a peace invulnerable to the schemings of unworthy men, and a peace that will let all men live in freedom, reaping the just rewards of their honest toil.
A peace that would be lasting, a peace that would allow everyone to live in freedom, a peace that would make sure that everyone has an opportunity to pursue their own dream, to earn the just rewards from their honest work, their honest effort. It's a most extraordinary thing. I came upon this solely by accident. I was not familiar with this particular moment relating to D-Day and President Roosevelt. Again, it was 80 years ago on June the 6th. So tomorrow, as we celebrate that important moment in world history, in freedom's history, in liberty's history. And to me, it's significant. It is no small thing that a president of the United States would first address the nation, and he only addressed the nation for about 37 seconds. And then he led the nation, but not in the way we typically think about leading. It was not a grand speech. It was not a list of policies. It was not a prescription for what had to be done. Roosevelt led the nation in prayer. And I think the things that he prayed for were also telling. And I think they're just as applicable to where we are in the world right now. Whether you look at what's happening in Europe and Ukraine with the march of Russia, if you look at what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Taiwan, and a host of other places around the world, I think the things that Roosevelt prayed for still matter. I think it is the idea that in America we're not on some conquest to take over the world, but it's a conquest of peace and to end conquest by those evil forces and evil ideas that suppress people. He also prayed that we would not do this as a single day, but that we would always pray. Imagine how that would change the dynamic if the country every day was praying to be just a little better, to be a little more understanding, to be a little more focused on the things that matter and less concerned about the things that are going to come and go. If we do that, the cause of freedom is still as bright as it was 80 years ago when everything began to change on D-Day. And I think it was the fact that a president didn't speak to the nation, didn't address the nation, but led the nation in prayer. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something today that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, live from the steps of the state capitol. This is KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. 86 degrees and blue sky in Salt Lake City. KSL's top story. 2